You beat
Now
me.
we're connected. And Mindy, you're still Stephen Oliver.
Yeah, that's what I'm working on.
Yeah.
There we go.
Fantastic. And we're a little early, but we can go ahead and get started. And for anyone who arrived late, this is going to be recorded so they can have access to the replay as well. Let me introduce everybody. We have Mindy Godfrey here. And she has been in a variety of industries, most recently Eventbrite, but heavily focused on youth marketing, event marketing, obviously event marketing with Eventbrite, but also in the Christian. How would you describe that niche, Mindy? The Christian events and big event promotions and so forth as well. So tell them a little bit more about you, Mindy, real quickly.
Yeah, I came from events and publishing within the Christian industry, working for a division of Zondervan Publishing that hosted large-scale conferences, and then moved to Eventbrite and worked there in a variety of roles, but largely focused on attendee relations and on-site management.
And you've got a wonderfully relevant degree, a master's in divinity. So
yes.
you can stay connected with that. And then we have Greg Moody here, who's also equally overeducated with your engineering background and your master's and most recently your PhD. But Greg, you've been in business now for yourself since the early 90s. And have had multiple physical retail locations, have done an awful lot of other work, including an awful lot of technical online development, website development, database management, et cetera, with that. But tell everybody a little bit about your background and how it's relevant here.
Well, I started out as an engineer, so I did work with NASA and with aerospace projects, and then I got into business for myself in '92, and I've been doing that ever since. I think it's there's so many things that from that industry, the industrial background that I was lucky to have, but what we see in small businesses is that entrepreneurs aren't really focused on having systems and processes in place. And I've I've been really lucky to, as I've built my businesses, been able to build them in such a way that I can leave and go on vacation and leave and do other things. So, I'm really focused on that. So when we help people, and we've been working together for many years now. It's been about 10 years now, I think. Yeah, or more than that. Yeah. When we work with people, we want to make sure that not only we're helping them make their business better, but also make it to be in such a way that they can have a good lifestyle. Because kind of coming from the background that I've had, I always want to, I've always focused on not only just making the business better, but making it in such a way that we can replicate it. And replicate it, if you want to have multiple businesses, that's great, but also replicate it in such a way, and especially for the advisors that we're having today, so that if you leave, that the business can be run in an automated way, or at least run in a way that you don't have to be managing it and, at 3 a.m. and getting up at midnight to take care of every little thing. So that's something that I think is something I pride myself on, and we want to make sure that I think in business that we pay attention to.
Yeah, and we kind of use the term practice and business interchangeably, but you brought up something that I think is relevant, is a lot of financial advisors think that they're the business, right? And so it's 100% about their labor, doing mostly brute labor marketing, face-to-face meetings, closing sales, moving on to the next sale. One of the things that we specialize in is turning it from it's all about you into really a sustainable business. A great book that you may have recommended me, or I may have recommended to you years ago, is The E-Myth by Gerber. And the whole point is you should be working on your business, not working in your business. But one of the things that we specialize with, especially with the advisors and wealth managers and so forth, is really shifting from it's all about them to developing systems to create marketing flow, systems to create constant customer contact and or client engagement, and systems to make sure that everything doesn't revolve around them. And like you said, whether it's you want to take a vacation, you want to gradually retire, or you want an asset to sell, is, somebody's willing to buy a business. They don't care about, what was driven and developed by your personality so much, right? So
Well,
all of those
yeah.
things are.
Well, and I was going to add too, and especially for our financial advisors that we work with, that they're not the bottleneck. If they're the only one that can, and they may be the one that does a lot of the primary work with the client, but to have some of the systems and things that we can help them develop, or maybe make things more efficient so that they can handle more clients, and they can handle their clients in a way such that the assets under management that they can per client are higher. It just makes a way to multiply their income and multiply what they can do, but yet maybe make their lifestyle a little bit better so that it's more manageable.
Yeah.
That's something that just makes it makes business the way it should be, rather than being a slave to your business.
Yeah, and maybe some of my background. I went to Georgetown University. I was a National Merit Scholar and all that stuff, thinking that I was going to get a degree in international economics, get an MBA from Harvard, and end up on Wall Street. And somewhere along the way, I got the degree in international economics, got the MBA, and ended up opening a chain of martial arts schools, which didn't have much to do with ending up in Manhattan in the financial district. But made such a splash in Denver, massive TV promotions, massive publicity, massive, recognition, engagement, and so forth, is very early on. This is back in the 80s. I was constantly being approached by managing partner of big law firms, wealth managers, pretty much everybody that I ever dealt with, was saying, well, instead of me selling you my thing, why don't you show me how it is you're doing what you're doing? Because, they were obviously impressed with it. And similar in the way that you did, Greg, is ended up doing coaching and consulting almost by accident as an afterthought for just how well recognized and visible the organization was. And running an organization like that, we ended up with, everything from the CEO of Wells Fargo to, the head of Chipotle, and, everything in between, as students who then were looking for taking marketing ideas, business operation ideas, and so forth, and translating it into their business. And, and that brings me into a subject we were talking about before we got started here, is every niche is like this. Every group is like this. Every industry subset is like this. But more so than I've ever seen, wealth managers, financial advisors, they really tend to be what my friend and mentor Dan Kennedy calls marketing incest. It seems like what happens is you get anointed, you get your license, or you get a certified financial planning thing, CFP or whatever, and you end up in the industry, and what happens is you look around at what everybody else is doing and say, well, that's what we must do in this industry, and you just do that, right? And so that's what Dan calls marketing incest, and the outcome of marketing incest is mediocrity, right? Because by definition, if you take what everyone else is doing, you're talking about mimicking mediocrity and mimicking normality. And the only way to really be particularly wealthy and particularly successful is be abnormal and to go against the tide, to be contrarian, to put it in investing terms. The flip side of that, and I forget whose quote it was, I think it was Earl Nightingale many years ago, but he said, if you end up being plopped down into an industry and you can't figure out what to do, look around at what everybody else is doing and do the opposite. And that's much better advice, right? Is look around at what everybody else is doing and do the opposite. So one of the things that we have taught for years now, and I freely admit I stole this from Jay Abraham, is the marketing Parthenon. So building multiple pillars. Think about the Parthenon in Greece, or Mindy, you're in Tennessee, the Parthenon, which is a little better looking now in Tennessee. The Parthenon has all these different pillars supporting the roof, right? And what most businesses do is they end up with just one pillar. So, we've just gone through this whole COVID thing recently. Think about, a lot of financial advisors, their one pillar was, let's host luncheon or dinner meetings. And we'll mail out a ton of postcards or invitations and get people in for a dinner meeting, fill the room with, retirees and soon to be retirees, and then we'll pitch them on whatever it is we're pitching them. Well, if suddenly everything gets locked down and you can't have a dinner meeting, having that one pillar, whatever the pillar is it's very, 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 very dangerous. It can get knocked out from under you right away. With all the clients that we were working with 10, 20, 30 different pillars feeding traffic, well, 2 or 3 of them go away, 4 or 5 of them go away. Others were working great. As an example is we've been doing a lot of work also with Facebook. Well, during that time, Facebook's engagement went up as much as 650%, and the ad rates went down because the big dumb companies, what did they do when things were uncertain? They pull their ad budgets. What's the first thing that stupid big companies do? They fire the salespeople and they pull the ad budgets. Really? I mean, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure out that's the opposite of what you should do, right? You should pump up the ad budget and hire, train the salespeople you have and make them good, because usually they're horrible, but you should get more of them. So that's one example of what we'll start with, is building that marketing Parthenon, really getting 10 or 20 different feeders every month for new solid prospects, to get a lead flow that you convert into solid qualified prospects that you then convert into clients, and really keeping track of that process. Mindy, you've been talking to a bunch of financial advisors and wealth managers just in the last couple of days. What are some of the concerns you've been hearing and things that they're particularly focused on and worried about right now?
Yeah, I hear a lot about people being really concerned that the fear level is really driving people's decision making, and they're hearing a lot of bad advice on what to do in a market downturn. Mm-hmm. Consequently, people are panicking and making unwise decisions. And if you, as the financial advisor, haven't built that relationship with your client base, then you definitely are going to have some clients panicking. It's going to take a lot of time to really hold their hands, make sure that they make wise decisions in light of current market, the current market situation. That's going to be a really key thing, I think, in the long term is, once you've got those clients, building that relationship so that you can expand your assets under management with each client, but also really help them navigate all the fluctuations in the marketplace.
Sure.
And I think the clients that we've been working with, they've been doing that all along and having a consistent relationship with the clients, so that during this time, they're being even more active and it makes sense to the clients. So a lot of them have expanded what their assets under management were immediately, because they could communicate with them, even though they were panicking. Everybody ended up panicking if there's a downturn, whether it's now or a different time, or even if there's no market downturn, if the client would have an individual emergency or an individual problem, making sure that they have a good communication with the client over the long term. And some of those things, as we've talking about before, need to be automated, because you guys, as advisors, may not have. What we want to do is expand your client base. And if you have more clients, well, how can you handle more communication with them? Well, that's the key that we help people with, is making sure that you have enough systems in place so that this stuff happens automatically and also is manageable in such a way that you have higher quality communication, but it doesn't take you a lot more time.
Yeah.
Not just do more work.
And in every niche, it's not just, in this one, I work with some of the top coaches and consultants, to chiropractors and to dentists and to CPAs and 2 of the biggest guys that work with attorneys all over the world, as well as, martial arts, etc. And in every niche, there's been what I not too generously refer to, and I freely admit I stole this from Steve Jobs. His conversation about coming back to Apple is, he said, all high growth companies, the biggest risk is they undergo a bozo explosion. And instead of having A players, A players start hiring B players, and B players hire C players, and then all hell breaks loose. But as far as coaching, consulting, advice givers, there's definitely a bozo explosion that has gone on in every niche, right? And you see it, online advertising, offline, et cetera. You got the 22-year-old kid who tinkered around and figured out how to build websites and is good at doing pay-per-click marketing, and suddenly they're a financial advisor guru on online marketing, or they've played around with Facebook and they drove Facebook ads for gaming systems or something, and suddenly decided that looks like a ripe niche. I'm going to be the the guru for that. And they have no idea the language. They have no idea the sales process, the client relationship, et cetera, in that. So that bozo explosion is real. I'll tell you what's just as dangerous, though, is the folks who have been in the industry for 20 years, 30 years, or 40 years, who have had that myopia, have had that just looking at what everyone else is doing and only doing that, have had pretty good success with brute force referrals or with brute force dinner meetings, or have picked one thing and have had pretty good success with that. And then they're out giving advice with very limited perspective of one, building a Parthenon of multiple things to do, but also really how the world has changed. I mean, we know more than most of anybody, is marketing has changed dramatically. In this niche, if you had asked me 3 years ago about Facebook marketing and social media advertising, I would have said it's a waste of time. Don't ever log on, don't ever mess with it, and don't get sucked into it. Right now, I love Facebook advertising. It's working great. And guess what? The politicians are messing with it. Doesn't matter whether they have an R or a D behind their name. They're all trying to kill it. So is it going to be just as effective next year? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. We know it didn't work very well 3 years ago. Works great right now. And what's next year, the following year look like? Who knows? But that's why you have to stay up with what's currently working today and what the numbers are. You've got to know what the lead flow looks like, what the conversion rate is, what the conversion to solid prospect is, et cetera. But, maybe we could go through, kind of common in the industry is advisors know to go through their client base, let's say. So let's say you have 400 people that you've sold something to or are doing some level of investment for. So they know to go through their list and let's categorize them as ABCs. Who are my top ones based on volume? Who are my middle ones? Who are my lowest level? But then to me, they take the exact wrong approach, right? But, we can go back to it, but that's a common thing is go through and ABC your clients and spend most of your time, it's a butchering of the 80-20 rule is, 80% of your results are going to come from 20% of your efforts. So if you can subset the people you're dealing with and only put efforts into the ones that are already valuable, you're in better shape. That's, kind of a bastardization of that idea and one that is a misnomer. We would always prefer to take the C's and turn them into B's and take the B's and turn them into A's and take the A's and turn them into A pluses. So, and you can do that by continuing to expand assets under management, continuing to sell them additional products that would be appropriate for them, or you can do that by extending their referral base and continuing to build that relationship and build your credibility, and then networking with all of your clients into a higher level. As a separate example, and it is a true story. I mean, years ago, I was going to a dentist and I really liked them, and their office was fairly convenient and their staff was nice, one thing or another. And then a year later, I thought, well, I never heard from them, and I probably needed a checkup or something. I couldn't remember their name. And this is one of those industries where if your clients aren't getting something in the mail from you a couple times a month, if they're not getting regular outreach from you, well, okay, so they bought something, but that doesn't mean that they have credibility. That doesn't mean you're the first one they're going to turn to. And that doesn't mean, frankly, they even remember that you're out there most of the time. You want
to and usually I think if you're working with an organization, like there's a lot of great organizations that you're selling your services with, depending on what that is, there's a lot of them. They have some systems that are in place to maybe connect with your clients, but generally those aren't adequate for you to really be a top performer. So what we want to help everybody with is how to do a little bit and make sure you're still within compliance for sure, because that's something that we understand really well as well. But make sure that you connect with them in a way that's easy enough to do, but that does connect with them on a regular basis. Because the example I was mentioning before is I ended up I might invest with somebody, but then I buy my life insurance with somebody else. That would be just because the guy that I did my investments with may not have mentioned that I sold that he did life insurance as well. You know, that would be a tragedy for somebody that was a financial advisor.
Yeah, yeah. Or they really haven't revisited it in forever. And, you know, there was a marketing great. If you saw the show Mad Men, it was in part based upon him. And throughout the show, they occasionally mention Ogilvy. And there's a great book that he wrote called Ogilvy on Advertising. And there's several others. Um, um, in fact, there was an update, Ogilvy on Advertising in the digital age, he's passed away, but written by the CEO of Ogilvy. But what he referred to it is the moving parade of humanity. And what he meant by that is, let's say that I was going to geographically target it. Not that, you know, I'm mailing to a certain neighborhood and they're all moving. But what he meant by the moving parade of humanity is what they're focused on, what's happening in their life, what they need is changing from month to month, right? And so if you have somebody, for instance, who's only able to invest $1,000 a month, well, at that point in time when you had that initial conversation with them, that may have been where they were at, right? However, if you're not in constant communication and constantly in front of them and constantly building that awareness, what happens when the inheritance comes in? What happens when they get promoted? What happens when the wife or the husband suddenly shifts careers into something that's much more lucrative, et cetera? There's these constant chain things that happen that can be a financial crisis. They blow out the transmission in the car, it's an extra $4,000 expense and it's out of warranty, right? Those types of things. Grandmother's in the hospital, she needs chemo and has no, you know, they have to help pay the hospital bill. There's things that are financial tragedies that are temporary. There's also all kinds of fluctuations in what they're interested in. And it's not just the normal that we think about, you know, marriage, divorce, death. Those all have an impact. But there's also just changes in their attitudes, changes in what's going on. And if you're not constantly communicating with them and constantly in front of them, you're not there at the right time to help them grow and help them develop. But, you know, going through, you know, it's pretty common that, you know, advisors think in terms of, I mean, I've got a bunch of cartoons that we're going to put in the, you know, the new marketing book. But I don't think it takes a genius to know you're better off to sell, you know, financial advice, wealth management services to rich people than poor people, right? So you're probably not going to go advertise in the slums. You're probably more likely you'd be better off at the country club. But what most people really don't target in very well is what I've heard more recently called avatar client, or what your ideal client is. An example, and this kind of crosses ideas, but is also then targeting a niche. And then another element, and a lot of people are familiar with that. You know, let's become the wealth manager for all the surgeons in our area. Let's become the guy for the for the plastic surgeons, because they make the most cash flow, right? Let's go find an, except right now, let's go find that targeted niche. But the next thing is then what I've heard marketing gurus call host parasite or host beneficiary relationship. Let's go find somebody else who has that niche, who has that group of people as customers, and let's go figure out a way to partner with them. I see all over the place, everybody telling you, I can tell you how to get the CPAs to send you all of their best clients. Well, yeah. I mean, if you've got a relationship with a bunch of them and they're willing to support you, that's great. But there's much more effective ways to do it than to just go try to incentivize a CPA to send things. I mean, why not be speaking to the local association of plastic surgeons, the local association of surgeons? An example, Mindy, you and Greg, you were very, very involved with this one, is we just did a deal, Peter Harnish of Northwest Mutual as one of our clients. He just did $100,000 in commissions by doing that host parasite relationship with a bunch of all things, martial arts schools, right? Now, wouldn't be my choice of niches, to go target for this, but in 6 weeks, in April, May, during coronavirus shutdowns, he had one of his best months ever, right? So it's just finding somebody who is an influencer, coordinating with them, getting them to give you access in order to help develop their clients. And by the way, I work with a bunch of people like that. I've got a good friend who is the advisor for dentists, showing them how to build enough wealth to get rid of their dental practice, because it seems like there's no such thing as a dentist who wants to actually practice dentistry. I've got another one who does that with chiropractors, another one that does, in all kinds of different niches. Build on that, Greg.
Well, there's a lot of ways that you can access these people, but what we want to help you do is know how to access these people and what to say. I think what holds people back a lot of times when we say things like this is, well, yeah, that all sounds great, but then what do I say next? And what do I do next? And how do I approach them? And I mean, a lot of people that are financial advisors are pretty good at speaking with people one-on-one, or pretty good at, when people come to them and say, hey, I want some help with my financial advice. But hey, I understand that it may be a little intimidating to go out and reach out to somebody that's a CPA that has a big client base, or reach out to some group that might be a really good target group to talk to. But that's what we're going to help you with and give you exactly what to say and how to do it. And we've got a lot of background. We just gave you a good example of Peter doing really well with that. That's one of our recent ones with a group that was, like you said, maybe not the target that we would have even thought of, but he's still got $100,000 in commissions, not in assets under management, but commissions. So what we want to do is help you with that so that you can have an easier time doing it. I think what holds people back is all these ideas sound good, but then, well, yeah, but what do I do next? And that's what we know how to do, step A, B, C, D, E, so that it's not going to be hard. Yeah. None of these things are really hard. They're not really rocket science. Right. The other thing that you said, and I think is really important to say at this point, you're giving a really good example of one thing, one of the pillars of the Parthenon. What the big concept is to have a really healthy business, whatever business you're doing, and we work with a lot of people in different businesses, but as a financial advisor, is to have enough things that you're doing. Hopefully some of these are going to be automated enough so you don't have to spend a lot of time every month doing them, but enough things that you're doing on a regular basis that some of these are going to be home runs, like these can be that you're talking about right now. But if one month maybe you didn't get as much as many results from that particular type of activity, then another one of the activities that we'd be working on, like maybe Facebook marketing that particular month, would be a big home run. Because the truth is, and we're only going to tell you the truth, by the way, not like what you mentioned before, kind of the bozo explosion. Yeah, and I think what's really key about that is those guys tend to help you with one thing. There's one thing or two things that they say they're going to help you with. Like the kid that thinks he's the expert at Facebook marketing or their websites or one particular thing. They may have success with one or two people they can share with you. You're fixing your hair there.
Yeah, the lockdown has
grown your hair. Yeah, it's grown. Yeah. In Arizona, we can get haircuts.
Luckily, I have some hair to grow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Anyway, but a lot of these guys that are giving advice, you can tell what's going on because the advice is really narrow. And you said in terms of in the financial advisor world, they tend to have kind of an incestuous relationship with the way that they look for advice. But I think even the people that are doing advising, you can kind of tell that they're not giving you very good advice because it's only about a couple things. And what we know, and it makes it harder sometimes when we work with people, is, hey, you've got to have 20 things or so working, or at least enough things working all the time. And then from there, we got to make sure we do a really good job of getting those prospects to turn into real appointments and real face-to-face conversations. And then from there, help you with that so that you can be very effective at turning those face-to-face conversations. Because we've also seen, Steve, that a lot of people that we've worked with have gone from a very low percentage of people that were real high quality leads turning into actual, people that have invested with them, to a much higher conversion rate. So that there's different pieces down the line that we need to help people with, and we really need to look at the big picture to make everything successful. And once you fix increasing the lead flow, so you get a lot more prospects, and then once you fix maybe doubling or tripling the number of those prospects that turn into clients, you know, double or triple this number and double or triple that number, pretty soon you've quadrupled or 10 times the number of your total business.
Yeah, a lot of times another analogy we use is it's kind of like turning the dials, right? So if you have 20 dials that you can adjust, and obviously you start with the marketing Parthenon to flow traffic in, but then if I can adjust that initial contact, so I can improve the ratio and improve the sorting between quality and low quality prospects, so that I'm only spending time on high quality prospects, but I have a high conversion rate. And then if I can kind of tune the dial, so I have a smooth conversion rate from lead to appointment, appointment to meeting, virtual or in person or whatever it might be. Then I have a smooth appointment from that initial appointment to really giving them the presentation of what the plan is and what they should be doing, and a tight conversion rate to closing that plan and turning them into a client. But then on the other side am I staying in communication with them? Do I have multiple referral systems at all times running to effectively expand what we're doing with them? And that's, again, it seems like it's pretty common that wealth managers, financial advisors know that they grow their business through getting referrals. But then when I have the conversation is, well, what referral systems do you have in place to generate referrals? Well, what do you mean? What's a referral system? Well, okay, let's start with, how do you generate referrals? Well, I ask them if they know anybody who needs advice. Well, okay, it's useful to ask. What is your script for asking? Well, I just ask them if they know anybody. Okay, well, there's a couple of scripts that are useful in order to, the term, I think I stole this from Tom Hopkins, isolate faces, to give them the ability to kind of isolate into different groups of people that might be appropriate. So even when you're just face-to-face doing manual labor, there's methodologies. But then the question is, what else are you doing to do referrals, right? We know across all kinds of different business niches that events tend to be one of the best solutions, right? So are you having client appreciation events? Do you have a client appreciation dinner? Do you have some kind of open house? Advisor I work with does a big thing at the local art gallery. So he's got a relationship there. They love it because he's bringing in wealthy customers into their gallery, and his clients love it because they bring their friends and they make it a night out and they have wine and cheese and one thing or another. But it's a great referral activity. So do you have multiple referral events? Another advisor, one of the great ways is, I thought I was going to have it on my desk here, but this is just a notebook, but let's say you have your own little book, and now I have a book. It could be a short one. I mean, we've published many of them, but maybe you have a 70-page book instead of a business card on a specific niche topic. So you can give each of your clients 5 or 10 of those, so that when it comes up about the child is, hopefully going to go to Harvard, and how am I going to pay for that? Or, I'm only 10 years from retirement. How do I cope with that? Whichever subject, they have something that facilitates the referral. So that works like a charm, right? So it's, do you have client events? Do you have constant client outreach? Are you communicating with them by mail? Are you having group events, webinars, live Zoom meetings, interactive meetings with them? Are you sending them, a great book is Joe Girard's book. He was Guinness Book of World Records as the #1 car salesman in the country by volume, and he was selling Chevrolets, if I remember correctly. But one of the things that Girard's saying is he had a customer base of like 25,000 people, and every month they got a card from him. They got a St. Patrick's Day, they got a Mother's Day, they got a Father's Day, Christmas, Thanksgiving, July 4th, whatever. If there wasn't one, he made up something. But they got a card from him every month with a simple message, "I like you." Well, it's not very sophisticated, but it's 10 times better than what most advisors are doing right now to maintain that client relationship and client contact, right? So if we build the newsletter that's going out every month, we build the client Zoom meetings and webinars that are happening every month, we build and again, everyone gets fixated on email. During the Corona thing, people actually were reading email. I was shocked. It's the first time years that email is worth of crap. But you've got to be communicating by mail, by telephone. You've got to be getting them on webinars, getting them on Zoom meetings, and not just sending them a generic Christmas card once a year, thinking they're going to remember who you are and care, right?
Which is almost the worst time to send them a card, because they're getting so many other cards from so many other people. And it's, you know, like for example, we're sending Thanksgiving cards, which is totally different type of card. And then you can send cards in other times. But you know, what you said is exactly right. Making the content, and you think, well, that costs money. I have to, you know, it costs time and it costs money, but how many clients do you need to get a good return on that investment of time? Or how many clients do you need? And there's ways to automate those things so that it doesn't require a lot of work.
Well, and
Really
I wrote, you know, one of the, you know, consultants, and the advice was subset your clients into A, B, and C clients, and then all the A clients get a handwritten Christmas card, and all the B clients get a different, I forget what the middle one was, and all the C clients get the generic, you know, pre-printed, you know, probably bulk mail stamp. You know, it's stupid, right? It's what you want to do is you want to have that perception of personal touch. You want to have that, you know, you can do automated handwritten anymore with live stamps. That's really good. But you want that recognition that you're thinking about them, that you're following up, and that you're touching them. And again, I mean, in when the market crashed recently, you know, conversation after conversation was, in reality, they don't say it this way, but what advisors were doing is basically jumping under the carpet, trying not to talk to their clients so that they wouldn't ask them to sell off all their assets. Well, you know, I mean, that's the opposite of being, I mean, that's not only, it's criminally negligent, right? Is, I forget where we lost the concept of, you know, sell high, buy low. Is you really should be, that's when you should be communicating with all of them, you know, communicating with them every week by mail, communicating with them every day by email, holding multiple different niche webinars, video conferences, and so forth, personally communicating with at least your top people, but somebody should be communicating with everybody, and again, turning C's to B's, B's to A's, and A's to A pluses, and using all of them for not only referrals, but for expanding your base and building assets under management, and having new products to expand into their portfolio as well.
Yeah, and I would like to, you know, I would add too, I think that's what a lot of our clients that we're working with liked about working with us in that way, because it's hard for them too. You know, it's hard for them too when their clients are freaking out and they, you know, having people calling them and saying, hey, I want to sell everything. And I mean, I think it's emotionally hard. So we were trying to help them with what to say and when to say it, because it's difficult when you don't have somebody in your corner. So for us being in their corner, it was nice to see the results that they got during that time. Because as we said, Peter's a good example of that with the 100,000 with a whole new group that he didn't even have. So creating, in some cases, creating new markets and new groups, but for the guys that we'd work with, keeping the clients that they had, and then in a lot of cases expanding on the business that they had with those clients appropriately expanding the business because it was in their best interest.
Yeah. And by the way, in that example, in a period of time that by government decree, they were all forced to have their businesses shut and shuttered, right? Right. And right now, I mean, you know, without being too specific on the corona and all the stuff, I got to tell you, crisis is the time when there's the most opportunity. And so much of the world thinks the opposite. You know, they turn on the news and they're watching CNN, MSNBC, and whatever, and they're getting all of this doomsday scenario. And I forget the name I keep using as a reference, you know, the Will Smith, you know, walking down the streets of New York with tumbleweeds, you know.
Legend. I am legend.
I am legend, yeah. And they start to catastrophize. They do two things. They catastrophize. They build it into something way more scary than it is. And then the second thing they do is they start mind reading. They say, well, everybody is thinking blank. You know, nobody will because they're thinking blank. So the biggest failure mechanism is catastrophizing and mind reading. But in crisis is when there's huge opportunity, right? It's also when all the mediocre players, which you know, the bottom half, the bottom 80% of your niche, they're all crawling under the carpet and curling up into the fetal position, you know, crying. This is the time to really build your practice. Hey, let's go back to that for a second before we run out of time. You know, we talked about practice versus business, and I brought up 7 habits. But one of the things that we're really good at is creating systems, automation, and effective processes overlaid with that in order to truly build a self-sustaining business, right? And get it out of being just all personality based and really building that communication. That doesn't mean you don't use your personality to build your business, but you can do that through automation. You can do that through tools, again, like newsletters and, you know, one-to-many. You can do, nowadays you can do a webinar with 5,000 people if you wanted to, but you can certainly do 50 at once or 100 at once. You can multiply it so it's not just all of your personal labor belly to belly, but even more so is to really turn a individual practice that's dependent upon you into a business with automation, people, and systems so that it really can grow independent of your day-to-day involvement. Most probably aren't in the mode of, you know, wanting to back out and running an absentee owner business, but you got to build that. I mean, and again, I've seen advisors who one day were in a motorcycle wreck, and now they can't be in there for 3 months. Well, you know, if they have a business, it's fine. If they have a practice, you know, this is what starts to happen: is no new business gets written, and old business starts to fade off, and since they're not available to service that. Build upon that a little bit, and then Mindy, let's go through a couple of the other thoughts and concerns you've had, and we'll before we run out of time here.
Yeah, I mean, you want to be able to have that relationship where you're walking alongside people and not just being in the crisis mode and being responsive to that, but really being able to just continue in that relationship and continue growing it along that route.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what are some of the other specific questions or concerns you've heard just in the last couple of days from different advisors or wealth managers?
Yeah, I think really knowing where to turn and really instead of having just a limited resource, you've talked about the marketing Parthenon. And I think that's just a really key thing because people don't know where to look for new prospects. When the news is full of everything going wrong, it's nice to have a team in your corner that's going to say, hey, here's what's going right. Here's where to look next. And that's something we certainly bring to the table because we've worked with so many different resources and with you and Stephen and Greg having done your own businesses so long, you've been through all the ups and downs and cycles and know how to survive and thrive no matter what the economic climate is. And that's just such a key thing is being able to address anxieties because everybody's a little anxious and that anxiety and not knowing where to look can create that paralysis. You refer to it as diving under the bed. And there's just not a reason for that right now. This is really the time to jump in and meet new people and walk alongside them. And that's, I think, going to be the key thing is knowing where to look next, knowing where to meet new people, how to make those introductions, and to really develop that prospect list.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, clearly when there's a downturn, right, especially a black swan event, you know, like the COVID thing was, but when there's a downturn, that's when your clients need the most engagement. Absolutely. They need the most relationship. They need the most reassurance, and they need the most creativity for helping them expand their base and expand rather than freaking out and again, selling low and buying high, right? But it's also a time when there are way more prospects and way more people out there that are really aware of a need to get an expert opinion and to get somebody that they trust, right? So it's a time when referral activities are going to work better than ever. Your existing clients are going to shift better. It's a time when social media related marketing, paid advertising, not just posting a bunch of crap, but where paid advertising is going to work great in LinkedIn and Facebook, et cetera. It's a time when direct mail marketing works better than ever. It's a time when people are really paying attention to the message, as long as you tie it in to what's going on in their mind and showing them as a solution. So it's a time when there's more opportunity than ever, much less, having to just kind of, and again, the other thing I notice is advisors, well, all of my office building is closed. Oh my God, what do I do? My staff isn't very well. People who are good at this shifted on a dime. So what? You have 5 staff member or 2 staff member who are suddenly working from the desk at home with their 3-year-old running around the background. So what? Is you just make that shift, and you need the guidance for making that shift, but it's easy to transition to interacting with clients on video or on phone, but video's better. I mean, it's closer to being, in person, face to face. It's easier to then look at niches that where they're all going to have a similar need. The medical niche, they all have similar needs right now. You can go through, different niches who all have similar needs right now. Makes it easier to craft the marketing message to them and to get in. And by the way, during that time, we're finding more than ever is outside organizations and people who see the need are completely willing and enthusiastic about communicating with their customer base, either by letting us mail to them, by them doing email, by them doing text messages, by them doing adding into personal conversations, referrals. It's just such an opportune time for all of that.
Well, it's an opportune time also to expand your market beyond what maybe a lot of advisors thought was just driving distance. Yeah. Because you thought that you had to meet with your client face to face in an office, in a nice building, in a certain place. And, otherwise there wouldn't be a personal relationship and a personal connection. And a lot of the businesses that we work with are, starting to think, gee, we could market to a much bigger market share and expand our services to a much bigger market share, because this kind of thing that we're doing right now would work just fine. And in a lot of ways, it's more convenient for the clients because they don't have to get up and get out of their house and go somewhere. They can do a meeting at lunchtime from their work or from someplace that they want to be. They can have their spouse involved in the meeting instead of having to coordinate too many people's schedules. It's a lot easier to coordinate schedules when you don't have to have transportation as part of the concern. So this could be a way that you talk about opportunities. There's a possibility that this helps, but what we've helped people with is guiding them through flipping the switch, like you said, and turning on a dime so that they can expand. And then I think what's going to happen as well for a lot of businesses that are doing this right and following some of the stuff, the things that we're doing, they're going to continue to grow, and there's going to be a lot of people that are left in the dust.
Yeah.
In all niches of businesses.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. We don't want that. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're here. That makes me feel bad as somebody who's been in business for, most of my adult life at this point now, and you have too, your entire adult life, really. You like to say you've never had a real job, or a regular job in a company. I did have a few years of that, but I mean, really my whole adult life been in business. I want for you guys that are on the call to be successful and make great livings doing this. And it really does make me sad that some people are not going to be that way, but it's the way it is. So some people can get on the train kind of and go in the right direction and be really, really successful. And there's going to be a bigger kind of piece of the pie in a lot of ways.
What was the way I heard it? I have spent all but 24 months of my life signing the front of the check, not the back of the check.
Right.
I heard it, and by the way, vast majority of the population have never had the experience of signing the front of the check for a bunch of people. Therefore, they have no earthly understanding, nor should they express their opinion upon how businesses should be run and what their perspective is. You hear all this craziness going on about people who've never had to make a payroll and never had to worry about, whether their staff is going to be able to pay their mortgage payments. So it's just absolutely insane, some of the things that come out of people's mouths. Let's give everybody a little bit of perspective about how we work on a regular basis. What we've really kind of taken, step it back for a second before we run out of time, is I see a lot of people try to learn how to run their practice or their business they buy a bunch of books, which is great. and they read the books. Hopefully, most books that get bought don't get read. They sit on the shelf, right? Or they get CDs and DVDs, or nowadays they get sent a link and they have online training. And by the way, that's become one of my personal policies. I just won't buy online only training because I know 30 seconds after I bought it, I forget it exists, right? And nor should I, should people sell purely online training for that matter. But what we do is combine the best of having a coach and a mentor, having a small group mastermind environment of other very smart people. We get the top people in the niche together on a weekly basis, brainstorming ideas, sharing results. We have a very clear policy. One, we only take sharp people who are already successful, who are looking to become massively successful. So the other thing is we have a very brutal no assholes policy. And this is one of those niches that there's a bunch of assholes. There's a number of people whose ego has gone wild for whatever reason. But we have a brutal no assholes policy, only sharp people, only people who are already successful, who want to become massively successful. And we get them in a room every week. Now, in a room nowadays, a Zoom room, not a physical boardroom, but we get them together every week, and we have an open discussion forum where we discuss with each other every day, sometimes multiple times a day, what's really working in the field right now. And it's a good opportunity for when somebody catastrophizes or mind reads, it's a good opportunity to bring them back down to earth and show them reality of what's going on, and then show them what really is working. So it's none of this stuff is hypothetical. You're never going to hear anything out of our mouths that aren't really working out in the field that month, that week, that really are having tremendous results. You're never going to get the 24-year-old who thinks he knows everything about internet marketing, and he's going to drive you a bunch of leads, and then you get, a whole bunch of broke people who won't answer their phone. That's how that program works, right? So, but that's, I think that's a pretty good description. It's in almost all cases not about learning a bunch of new stuff, although we're very good at holding people's hands on having a better and more effective sales process, keeping numbers, looking at what the outbound call sounds like, structuring the scripts, structuring the meeting and all of that. But it's not learning a bunch of new stuff. It's about having that mastermind group of really smart people. It's about having somebody looking over your shoulder, patting you on the back when you get it, more often kicking your ass to keep you into gear. It's that level of accountability every week. And in this niche, it's incredibly important to get outside of your little worldview of the other people in your organization who are all doing the same thing, and look at what others in similar or in different situations are doing. Look at what people in other businesses are doing, and bring it all into focus so that you can have that creativity and expand what it is you're doing. Mindy, what would you add to that? And Greg, I'll let you wrap up, and then we'll call it a day here.
Yeah, I think one of the big things with the group meetings is there's the yes and factor, in that you're able to get feedback on ideas and hear what others have tried, but then to plus that up so that it's not just you in a vacuum sitting there going, what can I do next? You've got a team of people with you to help come up with those next ideas and implementation. And then the better part is the tweaking of that, being able to fine tune and do those nuanced moves that allow you to keep having increased results without increased efforts.
Yeah. What would you add to that, Greg?
Yeah, well, and I think we covered really, if you want to do better, it's really hard to do that without having somebody pat you on the back, kick you in the rear for a consistent amount of time. And the information that people look at, and there's so much information. I mean, there's an overwhelming amount of information. The internet is seen to that. And even before the internet, frankly, you could buy a million books. It used to be Borders was the internet, or now Borders isn't anymore, but it's not about information. It's not about trying to go look up more stuff to do. And we see that all the time where somebody's in whatever niche of business they are. Oh, but I'm looking at, I talked to so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. And we can think of examples of, last 10 people we talked to that do that. And it's to narrow that down into something that we can help you focus on the next 2 or 3 things that you need to work on, maybe just one thing that you need to work on. Get that fixed, maybe get the flood of leads in so that you have enough prospects, and then get the next thing fixed and get the next thing fixed. And number one, that's going to save you save your sanity, because you can stay focused and you don't get caught up in the million things that you could probably be doing. Number two, it's going to get your results because you're going to actually accomplish the things. And then we can move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Because there are, for anybody that's in private practice or in business for themselves, there's really almost an infinite amount of things that you could do. There really are. You could stay up late at night. You could get up early. You could worry about it all day long. That's the curse really of being an entrepreneur. And I think the E-Myth book is a good book in this way. Is what we're really, really good at is all the things you said and getting you focused on the 1 or 2 things that you need to focus on first, with all the tools that we'll give you. So it's not about information, although we have all the information, definitely have everything that you need, but making sure that you're focused on the right stuff at the right time, so that's going to get you the most benefit and get the most investment of your time, which is the most important thing you've got to spend.
Yeah, and expanding what you said, what I tell everybody is if you have a 50-point to-do list, you're going to get nothing done. But if you boil it down and here's the 3 things I need to do. And what we're really good at is, well, I should be doing this. Yeah. But let's do that, 18 months from now. Let's do these 3 things. Well, what about, that's good for 24 months from now. Well, what about, okay, that's good for, in the fall maybe, but let's do this, and this, right? And usually for advisors, their biggest need is get a better closing system so that they're moving from lead to prospect to new client in a tight ratio. So get that really good, get it where it's automated, where they have tools, where they have their staff supporting, so it's not just about them. And then it's flood that pipeline with qualified prospects. Usually we start there. And then the next step is, okay, now I have 200 clients or 300 clients or 600 clients or whatever. It's, yeah, but do you really, right? Maybe they bought a product from you or they put a little bit of money under management, but are they really thinking of you as having a relationship, of revering the relationship, of looking to you as guidance? Are you maintaining that? Are you touching them every month in multiple ways? Are you continuing to educate them? Are you continuing to support them? Do they feel like they're getting support in a timely manner? And are you reaching out to them when they need you the most? See, I see even that gets done very poorly. And it's not so much that client retention is a problem, because somebody buys a product, or they put in a little bit of money. But what is certainly a problem is not having them in the pipeline for referrals, not expanding through their company, expanding through their niche, and not, as we talked about before, moving them from a C client to a B client to an A client to an A plus client, is not having that ascension in place to continue to develop the relationship. So, on that note, Mindy, your direct phone number is 303. You put it in your little box. Yep. There. 303-808-8719. Don't get excited. I didn't memorize it. I put it on the sheet up there. So if you've already gotten the online free seminars and the free books and all that stuff, great. If you haven't, you can go to advisorwealthmastery.com and register there. We have 2 books available, Mile High Maverick, Everything I Wish I Knew as 22, coming very shortly. I just got to finish banging it out here, is an update for the direct marketing for financial advisors and wealth managers book. That's coming up shortly. If you've registered and gotten the other 2, we'll put you in the queue to get that. All of it for free, no obligation. As well as we have a couple of videos that'll be available and so forth. But what we'd like to do is meet with you personally. We'll probably do it by Zoom, answer any questions that you have. If we're a good fit to work together, and I've got to tell you, a lot of people who are going to see this aren't going to be a good fit. They're going to be brand new to the business, or they're going to be, not at the financial level they need to be. But if you're, running a couple $100,000 a year plus practice and are really ready to grow that into the seven figures, we're the right place to be for that. So what we should do is talk if you're in that category. But if you call Mindy, she'll schedule a time for Greg Moody and then myself at 303-808-8719. So give her a call. We can schedule an appointment. There's, again, no cost, no obligation. And if you're a good fit, we'll work together from there and show you how to continue to grow and move into that seven-figure practice for real. And if not, hopefully this information has been helpful for you. Anything to wrap up with, guys?
I think everybody should, take the time to give Mindy a call, and then she'll do a good job of helping you either in one direction to talk to us, which would be great. If if it seems like a good fit, she's a good one to talk to about that. Or if not, she can give you some resources that we can help you with as well. But again, that number is 303-808-8719. She put it on her screen there so that you can see it. So, we look forward to talking to you if it makes sense.
And the other side was advisorwealthmastery.com. Well, thank you everybody for joining us here today, and hopefully it was helpful.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
And we're done.